Most of Week 13 is in the books, and it started with a high-scoring affair between the Seahawks and Cowboys in a game Dallas would go on to win with a 41-35 final. You may have thought the Steelers were playing this game with the amount of yellow on the field, as there were 257 yards of penalties in this game. But for Seattle, this was their fourth loss in 5 games, and we said this a few weeks ago when they were 6-4 after the Rams loss, but I really think they're on their way to being 6-8. Their next 2 games are at San Francisco and home against Philly. And when you give up 41 points on the road like they did in Week 13, you're not going to win many games. Positively for Seattle, the duo of DK Metcalf and Jackson Smith-Njigba looks really good, and they combined for nearly 200 yards, with DK having one of, if not the best games of his career, against an elite defense, by the way. I like the future of Seattle's offense, but their defense scares me a lot. And for Dallas, Dak is in the MVP conversation. Since the 49ers loss in Week 5, he has 21 passing touchdowns to just 2 interceptions and has a passer rating of over 121. Jake Ferguson is also coming into his own, and I know people get sick of hearing this, but this Cowboys team is legit. This feels a lot more real than it has in past years, and they will have a hell of a test for them next week when they play the Eagles. Staying in the NFC East, as we are on to Sunday for Dolphins Commanders. Miami got up quick and didn't let up as they won by 30 points in Landover, and since their Week 10 bye, they have allowed just 41 points. Granted, the opponents were the Raiders, the Tim Boyle-led Jets, and now the Commanders, but improvement is improvement. Their next 2 games are home against the Titans and Jets, and I said this in a video earlier last week, but I do expect them to head into the Christmas Eve game against Dallas with an 11-3 record. Granted, the Commanders' defense is a lot different from what it was in Week 1, but it is always good to see the offense click, and early. And for Washington, Ron Rivera is a fired coach coaching. We said this last week with Frank Reich, and it proved to be true, and it may be this week too, but Ron Rivera may be gone by the time you're watching this. From a schematic standpoint, getting into a track meet with Tyreek Hill is awful for any team, and you would have thought they learned after the first big touchdown. You don't accidentally lose by 30 points at home, and this team is very much on to 2024. Arguably, the most thrilling game of the day was the Chargers and Patriots, as there were, count 'em, 6 total points scored. LA improved to 5-7, and Khalil Mack is up to 15 sacks on the year, and Alex Erickson had a 23-yard catch to seal the win, and the good news for the Chargers stops there. They averaged 1.2 yards per carry on the day as a team, and there's still a lot of concern around first-round pick Quentin Johnston. QJ had a very bad drop on a big third down in the third quarter that would have moved the sticks and made the game significantly less stressful. A win is a win, of course, but there's no groundbreaking takeaways with the Chargers. They're 5-7 for a reason, and they were pretty lucky to win this game, and considering they pitched a shutout, that says a lot. For the Patriots, they scored 0 points against a very bad defense. That says everything you need to know about this game for them. Oh, and the fact that the Chargers scored 6 points and covered the 5.5-point spread. That's what you need to know from this game for New England. There's bad and there's monumentally bad offenses, and that's what New England is in 2023. Another thriller as we stay in the Northeast, and it's Falcons-Jets time. A Falcons tight end actually caught a touchdown pass in this game as Michael Pruitt scored from 20 yards out. And I think the best part about this game for the Falcons was securing a win against a solid defense and even overcoming a 2-0 deficit. The Jets did everything to stop the run as Atlanta averaged just 2.6 yards per carry in this game. Now, I know a lot of us probably feel the same way about whoever wins the NFC South, rightfully so, but the path for Atlanta to get to 10 wins is legitimately there. Their next 4 games are all winnable. Will they win with Big Arthur is another question in itself, but they can win the next 4. Also, Jesse Bates is playing at an all-pro level. For the Jets, here we are again with an abysmal offensive performance, and if you were wondering, they have 10 offensive touchdowns in 12 games. Robert Saleh is now 15-31 as the team's coach, and I think it's time to have the conversation. Tim Boyle was not surprisingly benched, and Trevor Siemian wasn't exactly the next Joe Namath. This is the textbook definition of a wasted year of a lot of good players' careers. Also, shout out the refs from this game, and if you know, you know. Tennessee dropped to 4-8 with a 31-28 overtime loss to the Colts, and there's not a lot of positives about the Titans situation. They may have a quarterback, and that's a big may, but the defense is horrible, the play calling is very suspect at times, and they do not maximize talent. Defensively, they are a mess, and credit to Tennessee, they did a good job of bottling up the run, but Gardner shredded them for over 300 yards, and not only that, they gave up a special teams touchdown on a blocked punt. In the long run, yes, this is better, but the product the Titans are putting out every Sunday is bad, and that in a lot of ways summarized the 2023 season for them. They are a bad football team. Now for Indy, yes, they improved to 7-5, but this win didn't move me in a way where I think they're contenders despite having a good record. If they play any decent team or a playoff team because they are in a position where they can make the playoffs, they lose this game. Positively though, and by the way, I cannot emphasize this enough, Michael Pittman needs to stay in Indy for a long time. The Broncos' 5-game win streak came to an end as the Texans won with a score of 22-17, and even though Denver lost, while I don't think they're going to win the Super Bowl this year, I still think there's a lot of good within this loss. We all knew the defense wouldn't be able to create 4 turnovers every game for the rest of time, and they didn't. In fact, Denver lost the turnover battle 3-0 and nearly won this game. Denver is 6-6, and I do think they will lose the Lions game, but the path to finishing 10-7 is there. The Chargers wouldn't scare me if I were a Broncos fan, and neither do the Patriots. The Raiders will probably be a tough game, but they can win 10 games. And for Houston, 7-5 7 months ago would have been a dream. I don't care that this win wasn't pretty, but you're 7-5 with a rookie quarterback in the MVP conversation who has not had a great run game to help him, and that wasn't just in week 13, that's been all year. This team is young and they're good, and Derek Stingley made a hell of a play on the interception, and my jaw dropped when he made the play because I couldn't believe it. This team is legit, and rebuilding D'Amico's way has had great success through the first 12 games. The Lions are 9-3, and they had to wait a long 10 days after Thanksgiving to bounce back and show they're for real, and they did, at least offensively, as they put up 33 points on the road and came away with a win. Sam Laporta had a day as he had 140 yards receiving, and Laporta is having one of the best rookie tight end seasons of all time. He's everything they wanted in a tight end, and they have him for the next several years. I know Lions fans are concerned with how they've won games recently, and especially with the fact they've given up 121 points defensively since their Week 9 bye, but they have the Bears again next week and the Broncos the following week. They can bounce back defensively against those teams, and it's only a matter of time until the Lions clinch the North. The Saints, on the other hand, have lost 3 in a row and are 5-7, and I'm not a huge fire a head coach guy over a singular loss, but Saints fans know Dennis Allen isn't the answer, and I am an advocate for cutting ties when you know something isn't working. The Saints roster is very talented, but I wasn't surprised at all that a Dan Campbell-led team beat a Dennis Allen-led team. He's not a good coach, and I think it's better to move on sooner rather than later. The Cardinals-Steelers game was delayed twice, and Arizona eventually won with a score of 24-10. There's naturally not going to be a lot of buzz or hype around the Cardinals in the middle of this season, but I like Trey McBride a lot, and there was a reason he was the first tight end off the board in 2022. Arizona is 2-2 since Kyler returned with wins over the Falcons and now the Steelers, and I trust GM Monty Ozenfort's long-term vision, but I am kindly asking Arizona to lose the rest of their games this year, so we have a Kyler Murray and Marvin Harrison Jr. connection. Obviously, teams don't go out with the purpose of losing, but we discussed this more during a video last week, and I think if you give this team an offseason or two, they will be just fine. For the Steelers, there's a lot to discuss here. We've went through this before with Mike Tomlin, and the whole standard is the standard, but you just lost at home by 2 touchdowns to a 2-10 and now 3-10 team. You fired the previous offensive coordinator and in 2 games have 26 points to show. I know Kenny went down early, but it's not like this team doesn't have playmakers or that they were playing a Super Bowl contending team. This wasn't San Francisco. The Miles Killebrew running into the returner penalty really summarizes this game for Pittsburgh. It was mistake after mistake, and the Steelers may end up making the playoffs, but guys, they're done. They're not going to do anything of note even if they get into the playoffs. Tampa improved to 5-7 with a 21-18 win over the Panthers, and Mike Evans, Mr. 1K himself, reached the 1,000-yard mark for the 10th straight year. And aside from him going to Canton, I think the biggest takeaway from this game, and this also applies to the Arizona-Pittsburgh game too for that matter, is there are no easy wins in the NFL, ever. and this game was the perfect representation of that. It took a 162-yard game from a future Hall of Fame wide receiver and an interception from a Pro Bowl safety at the end of the game by Antoine Winfield Jr. to seal a win, but I can't help but be underwhelmed with the Bucs and everything they've done or haven't done since their Week 5 bye. Tampa controls their destiny, and they play Atlanta in Week 14 and play the Saints again in Week 17. Tampa has the talent to finish with 9 wins, and the only question for them is, will they? Now, for Carolina, there's not much to take away other than they improved from last week to this week, and they were moving the ball and actually ran for over 130 yards as a team, which was only the 3rd time they've done that this year. They were officially eliminated from the playoffs, but with the interim coaching staff, really the only thing you can hope for moving forward is improvement, not just from Bryce, but from every young player on this team, including wide receiver Jonathan Mingo, who had a good game in Week 13, which was great to see from him. Out to LA for Browns-Rams, and I don't think Joe Flacco is taking the Browns to the Super Bowl. But to be fair to Joe, being put in his position was a next to impossible task, and asking a quarterback to put up 36 points in his team debut after just being signed is almost, well, impossible. Giving up 400 yards of offense and having the opposing quarterback throw for over 275 yards and 3 touchdowns is generally a recipe for losing, and not surprisingly, it was in this game too. I don't think there's any big takeaways for Cleveland aside from what we're probably all thinking, meaning they are done, but that is to be expected when you're down to your 4th quarterback. And I do want to acknowledge for Browns fans that this game was a lot closer than the final score indicated. The Rams are 3-0 since their Week 10 bye and have put up 35 plus points in 2 of those 3 games. With the Vikings offense looking bad, and even bad is not a strong enough word over the last few weeks, and with the Seahawks schedule coming up, I think there's a really good chance the Rams make the postseason. This team is different when Kyren Williams is playing, and obviously you'd never confuse him with a prime Todd Gurley, but the point is Sean McVay knows how to use running backs and get the most out of them. And I think if they can go 3-2 down the stretch, which is possible, they will be in the postseason. Now to southeastern Pennsylvania, and the Philadelphia Eagles are ginormous frauds. They lost by 23 points at home to the San Francisco 49ers, and before you tell me I'm an idiot and have that comment typed out, I am completely joking about the frauds comments, but I think there is a lot of context to this loss. I don't think in a normal situation the 49ers are 23 points better than the Eagles. Philly was playing their 3rd game in 13 days, while San Francisco had 10 days to prepare for this game, and even Eagles fans would acknowledge there's large chunks of games where the Eagles drift and kind of go through the motions, and against a team like this, you can't do that. It would be egregiously stupid for me to say the Eagles are done after this loss, because they're not, and I think there's a decent chance these teams play again. Now, for the 49ers, this was revenge. Disregard the 3 games in 13 days comment, because you guys don't care about that, and understandably so. The big takeaway I will have from this game is when the 49ers are on, like they were in this game, or like they were in the Dallas game back in Week 5, this is easily a Super Bowl winning caliber team that nobody will want to play. So my message to Philly after this game is loud and clear. Get the number 1 seed so you can get that first round bye, because it's going to mean a lot more this year than it has in years past. I hope you enjoyed the recap, and if you did, please like and subscribe, as only about 28% of people watching are subscribed, and it helps the channel tremendously. Also, please check out what we have learned from the 2023 NFL season video, as I think you will enjoy, and until next time, please be safe and have a great day. Love you guys.